Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Jaco Kleinhans, Head of International Liaison at Solidarity.
It's quite difficult to do the speech after this kind of intellectual contribution from Ernst, but what a privilege for this conference and for the opportunity to be here today. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests at this conference, I'm going to start with two controversial statements. People like to use all kinds of nice quotes in the beginning of their speeches, very visionary quotes of people who lived long ago. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to start my speech today by quoting a fighter of the Islamic State. In 2014, in Syria, during the civil war in Syria, and this is a well-known quote today, one of the Islamic fighters said to a journalist, "We've broken Sykes-Picot." Now let's be honest, 12 years later, they were not successful in breaking Sykes-Picot. You all know Sykes-Picot, that's the great British-French deal on cutting up the Middle East into all kinds of illogical states, territorial states, that are still creating so much problems today. Let's remember that quote, and we will refer to that a little later on again today. I also want to make a statement, in a sense, linking maybe to what Ernst said, and that is that I want to say that the liberal international order is on life support. And this conference today must be a first step to cut off that life support of the liberal international order. And when I refer to liberal international order, I must say that it's not that liberal anymore. That's the problem. It's not a liberal international order anymore. It's a statist, left-wing international order that wants to preserve things that are not supposed to be preserved. Now I'm ready to start with my written speech. So, thank you for the warm welcome. It's an honor to stand here before you today at this Lex Libertas Future of Nations conference. As a South African deeply invested in this continent's destiny, I thought to talk about Africa. And I'm thrilled to be here amongst policymakers, intellectuals. I see so many people with great academic records on these issues, leaders, political leaders from so many different countries. Our friends from America, Flanders, South Tyrol, from all these places. It's wonderful to spend time with you here today and to talk about these really important issues, not only for South Africa or for Africa, but truly for the world. Lex Libertas, our host, embodies the spirit of exploring self-governance, autonomy, and decentralization, ideas that resonate profoundly with South Africa and Africa's past, present, and potential future. So I'm going to focus today on, yes, South Africa, but then specifically also Africa, and the enduring curse of artificial borders that have shackled our progress over decades. I'll make the case for greater self-determination, draw lessons from history, showing that borders are never permanent, and I will encourage us here today to initiate a new initiative to connect Africa's fragmented voices. So let's begin with history. Some things from history that is very important, because history is still the great teacher that reminds us that borders are not divine. We cannot be taught by the United Nations about borders. The fact is, borders are not divine, but rather human constructs, even shifting, ever shifting, like the sands of the Sahara Desert. Over millennia, Africa's boundaries were fluid, shaped by migrations, empires, and trade routes. The ancient kingdoms of Mali, Ghana, the Songhai kingdom expanded and contracted according to the will of people and not empires. The Zulu nation rose through unification and adaptation, redrawing maps through cultural cohesion. Even in Europe, we saw borders changing constantly, from the Roman Empire's vast expanse to the times of the principalities of the Middle Ages and the redrawn lines following the two world wars. The Treaty of Westphalia in 1648 formalized the nation state. And I think there the CEO of Lex Libertas was right, in what is the difference today from the imagined nation state of the 1640s. But even after that, it wasn't the end point. The dissolution of Yugoslavia that was referred to here, the independence of Kosovo in 2008, and today the ongoing debates about the future of Catalonia, Scotland, South Tyrol, Flanders, and the many other areas in Europe that are not free, that are, in my sense, oppressed by territorial states. For some reason, the global political elite has concluded that today's borders are fixed and unchangeable. This is a mistaken notion that must be challenged, and we must challenge it here today. We simply need to convince people around the world more effectively and more efficiently, and not allow globalist narratives to dictate the thinking about national borders and territorial issues. So let's look at the territorial development of Africa, and I want to spend some time on the African continent because this is the continent I love the most. During the scramble for Africa in the late 19th century, things took a turn for the worse. You all know about the Conference of Berlin, how the European powers cut up Africa, the British, the French, the Germans, the Portuguese, others, and they used rulers and pencils, ignoring ethnic, linguistic, and cultural realities on the African continent. Straight lines were drawn. The Maasai was split up between Kenya and Tanzania, the airway between Ghana and Togo, and the Somalian people across 5 different states. In South Africa, colonial borders imposed by the British became a permanent and unsustainable reality. Neither we as Afrikaners nor the many, many other people and ethnic groups of this country ever asked for these borders. We never demanded it. It was never our suggestion to have the current borders that we have, well, for the last 116 years in South Africa. In fact, these borders were imposed on us for the last 116 years. These borders and the borders in Africa more generally were drawn for extraction. Let's be honest, not empowerment of people, to mine gold, to harvest cocoa in Western Africa, to control trade routes through the Congo. The problem with these borders is that in Africa that it created is the conflict. We see conflict in every part of Africa today. Endless border disputes between Ethiopia and Eritrea. The tension between the French and the English in Cameroon. I've got very good friends in the English minority in Cameroon. Think of what's happening in Nigeria, and we can go on and on with the many, many examples. Ethnic groups straddling these lines, such as the Tuareg in the Sahel, find themselves marginalized across multiple states. Insurgency, and it fuels insurgency like we see in the Sahel, Mali, and many other countries today. Look at what's happening in the DRC, and especially the eastern parts of the DRC. The DRC are probably today one of the best examples of an unsustainable unitary state. Culturally, some of these borders erode identity. Languages such as Swahili or the Hausa language are fragmented. Politically, they prop up centralized states disconnected from local realities. Again, look at Cameroon and the oppression of the English minority by the French majority in Cameroon. It's unacceptable. Those people are our friends. We need to partner with them in changing Africa. In South Africa, we've seen how rigid provincial borders, municipal borders, we can go on with that, how that really excluded people from the natural communities that they are supposed to be part of. We've seen in provinces like Mpumalanga, Limpopo, even the Western Cape, how politicians decided to sit around a table and draw lines that created unsustainable borders that are just people are just told to adhere to. So that is what we need to challenge here today and from here on in future. These borders in South Africa that are imposed on us, it breeds corruption, inefficiency, but especially alienation, turning governance into a zero-sum game in which elites in capitals hoard power while peripheries suffer. And I can tell you about many examples in South Africa. If you look at a crazy province like the Northern Cape, and you think that Kimberley is the capital city of the Northern Cape, and how it doesn't make any sense that people 1,000 kilometers further on need to get service delivery every single day from Kimberley, absolutely makes no sense. But it was because it was easy for the political elite that they made that decision. But friends, this is not Africa's inevitable fate. History teaches us that borders change when people demand it, through negotiation, preferably, revolution, if necessary, or evolution. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 peacefully redrew Europe's map. It's time for greater self-determination in Africa today. The right of communities to govern themselves in ways that respect their social, cultural, and economic realities. Self-determination begins with principled decentralization. Imagine city-states in Africa that are free to do what they can do, to trade, to get investments, and to build autonomy. Autonomy over education, policing, transport. It all sounds very familiar if you think about the Western Cape, right? But also trade, foreign policy. It's much more than just having control over your schools, your harbors, and your police force, as some politicians want to tell us in South Africa. Picture ethnic federations where people in Western Africa work together with ethnic groups in South Africa and Eastern Africa to work on international trade and other important issues for them. This is not a fantasy. The most successful country in the world today is Switzerland. It's also the most decentralized country in the world, with their cantons underlying linguistic and cultural autonomy. The base of the Swiss state is not a centralized government. I can probably ask you today here, tell me the name of the president of America. Well, that's easy, you know. Tell me the name of the president of Zimbabwe. Yeah, I think most people will know. Namibia, it will get a little more difficult. I have an idea that most of you are really intelligent people here, and that the vast majority of you won't be able to tell me the name of the Swiss president this morning. It's a damn good reason for that. There's a different president every year. And there's actually a committee governing Switzerland. So greater self-determination could unlock Africa's potential. It would reduce conflict by aligning governance with identities, as seen in Somaliland. And I think we must all do more to support the independence of Somaliland. Somaliland is a success. Somalia is a wasteland. It's a complete failure. So if Western powers wants to tell us, yeah, Somalia is part of, Somaliland is part of Somalia, they're talking absolute nonsense. In South Africa, devolving greater power to provinces could address inequality more effectively than Pretoria's one-size-fits-all policies. For stateless people, and I really want to talk about stateless people, I view myself as being part of a stateless people, we need hope for a future in which we can control our own destiny. Self-determination honors the UN the UN. The UN's charter in section 1. So the UN love to talk about their charters and not implement it, you know. They must maybe just start implementing it in terms of places like Somaliland and the many other examples I've mentioned. Self-determination also counters the destructive ideas of hyper-centralization, which Lex Libertas rightly critiques by rooting power in communities. That brings me, and I'm close to finishing, to my most important suggestion here today. I will suggest this morning that we as organizations, we as the Solidarity Movement, Lex Libertas, and the many, many other organizations here today, that we work together to establish a Pan-African platform to connect stateless peoples, from Cameroon to DRC, to Kenya, Nigeria, North African countries to South Africa, from Cape Town to Cairo, Dar es Salaam to Dakar in West Africa. This platform must serve as a digital and physical hub, starting with an online forum and annual summits linking activists, intellectuals, entrepreneurs, and political leaders. We must work with our friends in Europe, in America, on other continents, to talk about the consensual redrawing of borders, perhaps through referendums like in Scotland, or whatever other way we can find. For stateless groups, such as the Anglophones of Cameroon, which I do believe are very good friends of ours, the Biafrans people of Nigeria, the Sahrawis, the people in Tigray, oppressed by a government in Addis Ababa, all the displaced peoples in Africa. This platform must provide legal aid, advocacy, crowdfunding, international relations to pilot decentralized models, micro-nations. We need to talk about micro-nations for nomads, autonomous zones for urban innovators. And I think again about Cape Town, the potential there. Imagine when people, stateless people from different parts of Africa come together and work together on economic empowerment. This isn't about dismantling states overnight. It's about building momentum for a different African future, one in which borders serve people, not vice versa. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to conclude. The world is changing rapidly, like Ernst said in the beginning. Africa will play a key role in the future of the world. We're sitting on a continent with the most mineral resources, the greatest untapped agricultural potential, the fastest growing population. It's a continent that must function differently in the future, and therefore also look differently in the future. Let us, as Africans from South Africa, join hands with the dozens, sometimes even hundreds of peoples across Africa who are trapped in centralized states that do not serve their interests. Let us lead the reimagination of Africa in the future, because it starts here today. Thank you.